Peace, my people. Welcome to I Must Be BUGN, where we have honest, relatable conversations packed with powerful insights that spark curiosity and help melanated, gifted, and neurodivergent folks feel seen, safe, and celebrated. Here, labels don't have to feel like pathology, and complexity feels comfortable. Welcome to the latest recap episode of I Must Be BUGN. This is Sheldon Gay, your host. As always, such an honor to have you here. Today, we're going to do a recap of my conversation with Kwentin Shelton. But before we get into that, as always, let's start with a visual description for those that might be helpful for. So again, my name is Sheldon Gay. I use pronouns he and him. Today, I have on my black over-ear headphones. I am a black man in my 40s with light brown skin. I have a mustache and a goatee, black curly hair that's faded on the side and the back. Today, I have on a red hoodie of my design, which says, "Love doesn't require perfection." And behind me is a series of bookshelves of some of my favorite items, including a pillow of my design, which says, "Labels don't have to feel like pathology." And with that, look, thank you again, Kwentin, for coming out. Loved having our conversation. We got to get into some really interesting things, right? Kwentin's story, I think, is kind of the epitome of why I do this work, right? The Black experience, the broader neurodivergent experience, the gifted experience, right? Kind of merging those things together in one. And, so many different things. We'll kind of talk about that, right? But again, thank you, Kwentin, for coming through. If you haven't listened to the episode, go ahead and either pause this or after this, definitely go back and check it out because there's so much there that I won't be able to cover. But to that end, what I want to do is make sure that I give you some key takeaways that you can chew on before you go out and hit the streets. And so the first thing is the importance of early diagnosis. One of the things that is prevalent throughout the entire conversation is that Kwentin, told us at the beginning that he was diagnosed at 3 years old, I believe it was, right? And so he shared a number of different stories about how this helped him, right? Even if it still took a while for he and his family to kind of fully understand the different tools that they had at their disposal as related to, an IEP and other accommodations. There was definitely a benefit to them beginning that work with him early on, particularly because he was someone who, when he was younger, he was telling us is that he was nonverbal, right? And I know that can scare a lot of folks and kind of throw many people off. But because they started so early, with this work and approaching it from a space where, again, it was much more compassionate, it allowed him to then work to the point where, now he's doing interviews. And again, that's not necessarily everyone's journey, but the point is that the more that we start early and kind of get over this hump of looking into what may be, aberrant or just different behaviors that a child is exhibiting, the better that their outcomes will be. Even if the result of that, investigation is, hey, this is, it's not neurodivergence, let's just say that, right? But there are definitively studies that have shown that the earlier we identify those challenges, the better, again, this outcomes will be. And so that really is the work of this podcast, right? I'm trying to encourage people to do that self-discovery so that wherever you are in your journey, right, whether you are in your teens, whether you are, in your 20s, your 30s, or beyond, right, that as early as possible, you can start to have that curiosity about yourself. And furthermore, if you are a parent, that either that curiosity about yourself or that curiosity about your child can be sparked as soon as possible so that you can begin that journey now as opposed to later. Because again, that is how we improve the outcomes for this community. And again, this is, primarily again about helping people be curious and realize that not everything is about any kind of brokenness, right? And so another thing that we talked about, and this was like possibly the key thing, or certainly one of the key things that he brought up, and it was through multiple just really sad stories. But this is the point about that. Sorry, the point that gifted people can struggle. This is a challenge that many of us who are gifted and have these quote unquote spiky profiles, right, can deal with, right? Quentin told us a story about, again, multiple stories about people telling him that he basically had to choose between his giftedness and, his other neurodivergent manifestations, right? So, he couldn't be in the gifted class and the special, the special ed class because those two things don't go together, right? And so, yeah, that's a lot to sit with, right? But again, as we begin to spread the word about the fact that giftedness isn't this sort of like magic wand that makes someone exceptional across every avenue in every area, right? Then we can start to see people for their full humanity, right? And realize that, yeah, like, again, giftedness isn't this like magical Mario star, right? Or being Golden Sonic. Shout out to my gamers who get those references, but like, it's just a way of being. And this gets into a larger discussion, but again, what I loved about my conversation with Quentin was him just talking about vulnerably about what that felt like, right, to be in a special education class and you know feeling like, hey, I should be challenged more than what's going on here in certain areas, and or more specifically about how school systems and other elements of society, once you kind of put that special education label on people, all of a sudden it begins to ostracize you, right? And in literal and other ways, he talked about some of those challenges, socially, where people were, you know, bullying him and different things of that nature. And frankly, we know, there have been, stories, right, of gifted people who have felt the same way, even without the special education piece, right? Because if all of a sudden, I don't know, let's say until middle school, you've been in the same classes with however many kids, and all of a sudden you get picked off, right? Now you're whatever, there's maybe 20, 30 people in a class, and now you're picked off to be in some class that's got 5 or 10 of you, and everybody's wondering, well, why do you get to be in that class? Why do you get to leave the room, right? Well, there are a number of things that can come up for children and adults, right? We've seen this in adulthood. And so, him sharing this and kind of reinforcing the fact that, yeah, he might have been really, really great at math, but may have struggled in other areas. And that's not where we should, kind of point a finger and laugh or look at that as deficiency. That's where, he needed more support. And so that's where we find ways to offer support, right? And so this is, again, an important discussion. And again, there's just too many people still who think that people excelling in one area, means that they there's no space for them to need more support in others. Um, and again, there are many things that we could be saying about how we can create truly, truly inclusive classrooms where no one ever has to be sent to another room or whatever. When no one has to feel like they're left out or whatever. I'll have to find there's an account actually. I think it's called Conclusive Learning or something like that. I had to find the Instagram account where, excuse me, they're doing a lot of great work around, advocating for just that. But until we can kind of get all the way there, there's still a space where we should be able to create spaces where children never have to feel broken, never have to feel deficient, never have to feel ostracized, particularly at an age where all those things, that social dynamic, like who I am and who am I amongst my community, when those questions start to become really important without having a lot of the tools and the skills and the experience to fully hold all of it, right? And so another thing that we talked about is, and that Quentin brought up, I should say, to use his words, where you start is not necessarily where you finish. And so it summed up a lot of what he shared throughout the episode. This not only applied to some of the developmental things that he discussed, but also where, others saw him, in his career, and where, you might be seeing yourself in your career, your relationships, or other things, right? Where you are today doesn't necessarily mean that there's not some, great future, or some different future, which we hope is great, right, ahead of you, or greater future ahead of you. He talked a lot about all the people who doubted him, who just couldn't see his vision for what he was, working towards. They thought that because he went to community college or didn't stay in the workforce, that he was on a track that, again, just didn't have a bright future. And so he earned everything that he's achieved by believing in himself and taking his path and investing in his own vision for what his life could look like, and it has become, right? And so the same people who questioned his choice of community college then had to kind of chew on their words when he got to Kennesaw State, and the guidance counselor told him, hey, like, I'm looking at all these things you kind of have going on. Like, you're actually, further ahead than many of our students here, right? And this is where, again, we should be mindful of being kind of arrogant about our belief in ourselves, but and kind of like blocking out feedback from the world. But this is also where, again, we should be bought in on the idea that our vision for ourselves is fundamentally, one of the things I say in the episode is like, this part about, if I believe this thing about myself, it's up to me to then execute. It is not a reflection upon you. It is not, something that means that it has anything really to do with you at all, right? I have this belief in myself, and leave it to me to execute, right? Offer support, right? Like, ask how you can support, right? I think where a lot of people kind of get caught up is they feel like, I really care about this person. I want to see them do well. I see these like kind of landmines, and I'm going to try to eliminate them. But the reality is that that might not be what's best for them. One, because maybe they're not actually going down that road. They've already seen that, and they're taking a right where you thought that they were going to be going left, or because, yeah, sometimes getting your hands dirty is where the greatest learning happens. And so asking how we can support is the best thing to do there. But bringing it back to us as individuals, I know particularly when it comes to giftedness, this can be a challenge, because where we may show exceptional skills or awareness or insights or whatever, this is where that can reflect, a mirror on other people, and that can bring up their shame, that can bring up their insecurities. And so we need to be mindful of not taking that personally and just realizing, again, this is about me executing. This is not me saying I'm better. This is not me. Any of the things that all this external stuff, I need to not be focused on. I need to be focused on, how do I execute? And a big part of that is me owning my pieces. What do I need? What can I do? And then also look into your community. And so where those people are showing up asking how they can support, letting them support you, because nobody's going to be able to do any of these great things unto themselves, right? And so again, loved this episode. Please, like, seriously, go back and listen to it. It's a really great discussion. I really loved how, again, just how his story just embodies what this entire podcast is about. And so if you're somebody who's looking for help navigating spaces where you don't always feel seen, safe, and celebrated, go ahead and visit my website, sheldongaysbugn.com. It's in the show notes. Go there, schedule a call, and we could discuss how we can make a plan for you. And so with that, thank you so much for being here. And I leave you with these 3 things, as I always do, right? Which is, take time today to help a child feel seen. Make sure that you start with your own inner child. Second, don't be clever, be wise. Change yourself, and you will truly change the world. And then lastly, as always, labels don't have to feel like pathology. All right. Thank you so much. Go ahead and check out that episode. See you all next time. Peace. Thank you for joining me on another episode of I Must Be BUGN. I hope you felt seen, safe, and celebrated by what you heard today. Don't forget to visit my website, sheldongaysbugn.com, where you can catch all of my episodes, book me to speak, and check out my merch. Don't hesitate to hit me up on socials either. I'm eager to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and your stories. Remember, this podcast is all about sharing humanized narratives about who we are and how we contribute to the beautiful and necessary diversity of humanity. This is our place to unmask and just be. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe. It helps our people find community. So until next time, stay up and enjoy who you were meant to be. Ashe.